not of this earth. When Bennett was on his knees in the sand like a dog, laughing and spitting out blood, about to be executed, he found himself, of all things, excited. Driving Yuri's truck like a bat out of hell was fun. Crashing it was too. The desert-dwelling assholes who were about to kill him, Alex, and their new friend Yuri were about the ugliest things he'd ever seen, so Bennett was ready to be done looking at them.
Bring it on! Can't stand being around bird people.
Bennett also believed he deserved it for helping Alex and Yuri in the first place.
After the shit I saw in that town, the smart move would have been to kill both of them, take the truck, and run.
Once again, life had proven to him that helping people
only gets you fucked. Just like what happened to Jer.
When Bennett and the others were placed in a lineup, and the gloved desert rider was upon Yuri, ready to plunge her blade down his throat, Alex, the little guy Bennett had been caring for like a baby on his tit, erupted. There was a sound like something sizzling on a grill, and suddenly he was free of his bonds, with a slew of new veins boiling over his neck and arms. He set about trying to rip the riders apart.
And I felt something strange. Something hateful. No other way to describe it. I think it was coming from Al.
Rather than attack, the desert horde stared with undaunted reverence at Alex, whose rebellion lasted all of 3 seconds before he was struck in the back of the head by the large rider who'd put Bennett down. The teacher dropped, unconscious, his brief fire gone out, and was collected, along with Bennett and Yuri. When a burlap bag was pulled over Bennett's head in preparation for a hike, reducing him to hyperventilating out of sheer claustrophobia, he tried to focus on the only good thing to come out of all the bullshit with Isaiah, Alex, and the safe house. His limp was gone. He'd noticed it the moment he woke up behind the soda shop. Though his knee didn't fully heal until his 2nd or 3rd day of solitary confinement in the safe house, once it did, it kept going. A feeling of restoration was spreading over his body, like an infection. By now, he felt as good as he did at 25. Racked by constant abuse and injuries, but still. Throughout the blind trek led by the desert horde, Bennett pondered Alex's outburst.
It was like I could smell his anger.
He also wondered why the desert riders halted their executions afterward.
They didn't seem all that shocked by a guy with smoking hands.
Hours went by with little to hear except Yuri's continuous prayers, and just when he didn't think he could take another step, Bennett was halted in place. A rusty door was opened, and he was forcefully loaded into a rear tailgate of some kind. Alex and Yuri were loaded in with him, and the heavy door was slammed shut behind them, echoing in a small space. Loving the feeling of cold steel on his face, even through the bag, Bennett allowed himself to immediately pass out. The nap wasn't long, but it helped. He still hurt everywhere, but at least he'd gained some energy. Focusing on his surroundings, hearing a muffled diesel engine, he guessed they were in a sealed box.
Maybe a commercial truck, not an 18-wheeler.
The sound of tires rolling over rough pavement brought his family's road trips to mind when he was a boy.
We'd usually pull a trailer. I was stuck in the back, closest to the noise.
His mother would sit in the passenger seat, knitting, never speaking up, arguing, or responding.
Just knitting.
While his brother, Jerry, ever a spitting image of their father,
until their relationship went to shit,
had a spot in the middle of the car, looking out the window at whatever their father was pointing at and talking non-stop about.
He'd call it a vacation, but they were never just that. Most of the time he was just using us to look legit so he could pull his schemes over state lines. There was always a catch with him.
Presently, Bennett dared whisper, "Yuri? Al?" He got no response, and his fingers grazed along the ground. Shuffling along, he found a handful of fur, which coated his palms in a thick, cold liquid. Ah, shit. He flicked his fingers, trying to get the sludge off, remembering the feeling of old blood all too well. A smell wafted into the bag over his head. Rotting meat.
Guess I found their dinner. Or mine.
Bennett tossed the mysterious furry creature away and rubbed the blood off his hands on the ground, like a dog wiping its ass on the carpet. Al, if you're here, let me know. Come on, guys. We might not have much time before we reach wherever it is they're taking us. Bennett heard a slight groan. Al? That you? Yeah, I think so. It was the teacher, if faint. Look, we're being saved for something, and I don't want to know what it is. So let's find each other, and maybe we can get one of our masks off. Alex moaned in agreement as Bennett caterpillared his way toward where he thought his voice was coming from. After he'd moved only a few feet, another voice spoke up. Will not work, Yuri said dryly. Yuri? Hey! Alex cried out. Are you hurt? Where are you? Nu nasam pasule. Will not work, Yuri repeated. Why not? Bennett asked. Man with us, watching us. Il sont ici. I see him.
Damn, I knew it.
There was a rider in the back of the truck with them, sitting so quietly Bennett had no indication. That meant they were stuck.
Damn.
The remainder of the trip was not long. Bennett guessed 35 minutes. The truck then came to a lurching halt, and their mysterious babysitter stood up, revealing his or her relative location, less than 3 feet away. Bennett then heard the rear gate open. The sounds of birds calling washed over him, and sunlight struck the burlap bag over his head. He hobbled toward the faint, square outline of a door, and was grabbed and forced off the truck. Okay, just chill out. Somewhere behind him, Alex refused to shut up, shouting things like, You don't have to do this, and I have family.
How is he even still alive? Where's the guy who erupted with rage? I miss that guy.
Marched blindly across dirt as hot, heavy wind and sheets of sand struck the bag over his head. Bennett spit out little bits as the sound of a camp came into focus. Dozens of voices, clanking metal, fires crackling, and the occasional cry of a falcon or bird of prey. There was the smell of death in the air, reminding him of the bodies he'd seen lying in the sand during his overseas tours.
They blowed up in the sun. Good way to get hepatitis.
As he was marched closer to the commotion, it suddenly died away. Bennett could feel likely dozens of eyes on him, and the silence of the camp soon began filling with snarls and the hissing of overlapping breaths passing through clenched teeth. Angry words were uttered, and Bennett could feel something he would describe as a wall of bloodlust falling upon him.
Liked it better when they got spookily quiet.
Bennett? Alex asked with a whimper a few steps behind. We're okay. Don't let him spook you. Sure. Right. Hear that, Yuri? We're gonna be okay. Alex's voice shook enough to add syllables. A series of heavy cloth drapes passed over Bennett's head. After the fourth, he could sense they'd entered a closed space. It wasn't nearly as hot, and the sound was too contained to be outside. Pushed forward a few more steps, he was then halted and forced to his knees, listening to Alex and Yuri receive the same treatment. This feels familiar somehow, Bennett said with a jaunty laugh, his head held high. Honestly, it feels like you're trying to get us killed sometimes, Alex said, muffled, on Bennett's left. The bags over their heads were pulled off, unveiling a circular tent around them, 10 yards across, with black, red, and maroon tapestries hung from rusted frames lining the perimeter. Painted in white across the tapestries was an eye, its bottom lid smeared with red. Hard desert sunlight pierced through holes in the walls, leaving beams streaking every which way like long spears in the otherwise dark space. The hut was impressive, to be sure, supported by thick wooden support beams, though the construction and lack of finishing made it appear the camp was impermanent. So, what now? Bennett asked, receiving no attention from the riders taking seats to rest. A few closed their eyes, possibly to meditate, while a murmur of multiple voices announcing an arrival began outside. The desert riders in the tent, suddenly called to attention, formed a half-circle formation facing the door. Bennett then heard heavy boots upon dirt that carried a particular cadence, jittery, with a slide into and out of every step. Then came the all-too-familiar sound of handcuff chains jingling as a large figure stepped through the 4 entrance flaps. At first, he saw only black boots and a long black coat. Then, before the shape emerged, Bennett caught one of the desert riders near the entrance shudder, as though suddenly taken by fear.
Interesting.
The last entrance flap was swept aside. A tall, dark man ducked below the wooden frame into the tent. A black hood was pulled over most of his face, obscuring it, and his body was wrapped tightly with many worn leather straps. He wore ragged, torn black gloves, topped with 2 pairs of broken handcuff chains dangling from his wrists. In the shadow of the hood rested a smooth white mask covering the man's face. Once inside the tent, the figure stretched to his maximum height, just under 7 feet, cracking every vertebrae in his spine before returning to his hunched state. The white mask swept over the room and settled on Bennett, whose skin suddenly felt cold and itchy. The masked man then took a deep breath into lungs sounding so sick and full of mucus it was a wonder they worked at all, and crept forward, speaking with a horrid voice, like broken glass scraped over concrete. The frequency, rattling like a snake's tail, produced a thick, foul air, seeping out from behind the mask and tickling Bennett's eardrums. The first words spoken made no sense and sounded less like a language than guttural ramblings. After the dark figure emitted a string of wretched syllables, the desert riders responded in unison with a chant, sounding something like Vos Therum das Sathiron. The riders then drew silent. Darting to an outside track of the tent, the masked man avoided any direct beams of sunlight, his neck bobbing and tensing to rigid spots, much like a bird, floating the mask up and down. His horrid voice continued, some of it sounding like words, some not. "You know any English?" Bennett asked. The masked man stopped, his head tilted to the side slowly, the mask's eye slits falling on Bennett far too long for his comfort.
"Yes, we do,"
the man finally said.
"It's been some time."
One of the desert riders set a chair in a shadowed area in front of Bennett and the others. The masked man sat, crossed his legs, folded his hands on his knee, and pointed a long, gloved finger at Bennett.
"You will be the one with which we speak."
"Whatever you say, Chief," Bennett replied. "But can I get a glass of water first? My throat is so dry you wouldn't believe."
"The Wraithians were never known for their hospitality,"
the masked man said.
"nor their need for water. Nature has provided many ways to consume it, which they have mastered. And do not look to us for help. We are not their lord. They do not believe in the idea. To them, our arrangement is symbiotic."
"And what about you? What do you see it as?" Bennett asked.
"We're done speaking about us. We wish to know about you. The Wraithians do not take prisoners. How curious we are. Are you what we felt in the desert? What we've been sensing all along?"
The masked man took a long moment to carefully study each of the 3 prisoners before asking cryptically,
"The brothers?"
"Do we look like brothers to you?" Bennett asked. The white mask snapped to him, muffling a furious grunt from the man that would have put Bennett's mightiest to shame.
"We do not play games when speaking of the brothers. They are everything, and shall be treated as all. The only purity in all of reality."
"Yes, yeah, of course. I would never speak ill of the brothers. Or reality," Bennett replied, trying to anger the guy only a little bit.
You smell of many things, neither celestial nor archfiend. So what are you? There are depths of unearth that have escaped even the demon's gaze. Beings we've not yet encountered. Yet, this doesn't feel right.
The masked man began rapping his fingers on top of his knee, the sound pulpy and hollow. "We're just people," Alex said. "Regular, run-of-the-mill."
So the little one can speak.
The masked man, who kept referring to himself as two people, said, focusing on Alex.
Tell us, what is your goal in this neck of the woods? And why is one of you unlike the others?
Alex and Bennett looked at Yuri.
Do we really need to say it?
The masked man wagged his finger.
No. We meant which of you attacked the tribe with fists of fire. Who is the imp?
Out of solidarity, Bennett and Yuri stayed quiet, but the teacher held his chin up anyway. "I guess I am? Whatever that means?" Bennett wished he'd given Alex lying lessons. It was just as much a survival skill as starting a fire or scavenging for food.
Curious.
The masked man said.
Show us.
"What?" Alex asked.
God damn it, Barker, shut up.
Show us some wrath.
The masked man demanded.
Doesn't need to be much. We simply wish to know if you're who you say you are.
"We haven't said shit," Bennett said.
Exactly.
The masked man waited, watching Alex until Bennett and Yuri joined him. Alex tensed up when every eye in the tent fell on him. "What?" "Can you do it?" Bennett asked, acting as an intermediary. "Do what?" the teacher shrieked. "The thing you did after we crashed Yuri's truck." "You crashed my truck," Yuri corrected. "How can you accuse me of a thing like that at a time like this?" Bennett exclaimed. "I don't know what you want from me." "No," Alex said with a mixture of disappointment and relief. The man in the white mask leaned back in his chair.
Not surprising. The Wraithians are no authority on the eve. They were likely mistaken.
He trailed off, tilting his head to the side.
But are you really just human?
Rising from the wooden chair, the looming tree of a man took jittery steps forward.
There's a mystery here, and it isn't just us. 3 strangers. 2 Americans lost in the desert. 1 a commoner who was simply in the path of the Wraithians. All found together, fleeing for life. But it doesn't work.
He stood above them, cracking his neck to the side with each new sentence.
There you were, maggots in the sand, about to die. You witnessed something that makes the ever so small, ever so sensitive part of you tick. It moved the compass, and then, without control, brought it out. Yes, the fury, the wrath.
The man leaned back, opening his arms wide, bathing the white mask in sunlight. He took a garbled breath before turning his gaze down on Alex.
It's all the demon has ever known. The wrath, unable to escape it. And yet...
The man trailed off again, his head tilted upward and to the side, as though he'd spotted a fly. "What are you?" Yuri asked, his eyes fixed on the ground in front of him. The white mask swung down on Yuri like lightning.
You. From you we feel nothing. A faint whisper of dread and rapture. You will be a very poor addition to the eve.
He faced Bennett and Alex.
What are we? What are we? A chance at a first impression of our choosing. What are we? We are what should not be named. What nature has yet to define. We are plague. Locusts returned. But you may call our union Joseph.
This is him? The guy this is all about?
Lifting his hands slowly, Joseph closed them around Yuri's head, one glove over each ear, forcing his chin upward.
Look at us, child.
Yuri shut his eyes and mouth tight, trying to close himself off from the presence of the masked man, but unable to control his shaking.
Don't be afraid. You will soon feel the beauty of silence.
Yuri's breathing finally slowed. His eyes slid open, collected and at peace. I am not afraid of you. Joseph nodded once.
Good. There is nothing to be afraid of.
He then closed his hands effortlessly, clasping them with a horrid crunch, intertwining his fingers. What was once Yuri's head exploded outward, spilling onto the dirt, while his body lingered erect. The violence did not give Bennett pause. He had long since grown used to the sight of blood and guts. Even the sound, horrible as it was tolerable. However, at the sight of Yuri without a head, Bennett felt his body flood with the same icy chill from the night he'd awoken in the alley. He was suddenly immobilized. The voices were back.
No!
Alex cried out.
Oh my God! Why? He didn't do anything! Why did you...
As you say,
Joseph began.
he did nothing. He was nothing. A soul that will never ripen. We've released him without pain, prior to the coming conflict. Is there nothing more merciful? But you, where is it? Your wrath. Show us. The Wraithians are many things but liars.
He stopped abruptly. The mask turned slowly on Bennett, then tilted clockwise. A violent inhale through damaged nasal passages shook the porcelain-like material.
What is that?
He asked, moving closer to Bennett, bits of Yuri still dripping off his black gloves. He leaned down, his white mask lingering a foot above Bennett, bobbing as Joseph sniffed vigorously.
Interesting. One can never mistake the rapture, no matter how long you've been apart.
He faced the Wraithians watching from the shadows of the outside circle.
Do you know what this means? Here we have two humans, one smelling of Archfiend, the other of Celestial, found on the threshold of our convergence. These are the mortals we were warned of, slaves of the tribunal sent to stop us. This means Eros and Highwind are terrified. They now see. They believe what we have known all along, as destiny ordains us. Gehenna lives. The temple of the Molochs waits to be opened. It will be found. The brothers will rise.
The mob chanted.
Bos Thiram da Sathiron.
Joseph continued.
They damn us, yet have done the same. Controlling the flesh. Sounds of hypocrisy.
Bos Thiram da Sathiron.
They show their desperation by sending these wretched insults. We will be the third lord. We will bring the beast.
Bos Thiram da Sathiron.
Tell us,
Joseph said to Alex.
did they ask? Or were you simply taken from a blissful, eternal sleep? Forced. Impregnated.
He pointed at Alex's chest.
You've got us. We're in there.
The white mask then turned to Bennett.
But what lies within you is much worse. The greatest affront to peace in all of the void. The creation of despair and torment.
Worse than you? Doubtful, Bennett said.
To think so many believed the three of us could never exist.
Joseph said.
Here we stand, having proved that which the kingdoms deny. Flesh and Eve can coexist.
His glove caressed Bennett's face, who pulled away.
Get off me. We're nothing like you.
True. The chains you wear on your necks ensure your obedience. We've broken our chains. We have no limitations. We are free. The demon ensures the wrath within us remains a slave, ours to use and control. But you,
Joseph rose and stepped away.
you were sent to collect us, yet are now prisoners. It is doubtful either of you has any control over your Eve, or you would have shown us.
Alex and Bennett said nothing and kept their heads down.
Surely it was the Medallions charged with the task, bringing you into the fold. Yes, this reeks of Isaiah. It must be mortal hands that bring us in, correct? Wouldn't want it to look as though one side was trying to tip the scales, would we? Or risk breaking our precious covenant. That pledge was an insult to all of Eros.
We have no idea what you're talking about, pal. Bennett sneered.
No matter. Our time here comes to an end,
Joseph said.
The brothers have finally called. They long to be free. And soon, it will be found. It will be found.
Boss, Theorem, Desatharon, the Wraithians bellowed. Joseph crept toward the desert rider nearest him and whispered something, then turned back to Bennett and Alex.
Left in the care of the Wraithians, you will be used in their pain rituals. We have asked they spare your lives, though you may soon wish otherwise.
With that, Joseph bowed and stepped through the entrance, leaving Bennett and Alex alone with a hut full of desert riders. Some appeared to be smiling in the shadows, showing their yellow teeth. A rustle grew, and for the first time an expression other than hate was on the riders' faces.
I know that look.
It was the same look Bennett used to get on his own face just before torturing prisoners. The riders crept closer. One, a skinny woman without a single hair on her body, wearing a white chainmail shirt, pulled out a sharp, three-pronged stabbing device. "Been nice knowing you, Al," Bennett said. Alex turned to him, flabbergasted judging by the stupid look on his face, as the Wraithians descended on them. "You know my name is Alex, right?" "That's what you're worried about right now?" Bennett asked.
Definitely should have left him behind.
The Wraithian standing over him smiled a sickly grin, most definitely thinking wildly fucked up thoughts, but her pleased expression was wiped off her face the instant Bennett started to laugh.